Hello, investors. This is Todd Thomas, Associate Portfolio Manager with Revere Asset Management. Today is Saturday, June 21st. The time is 11:25 a.m. Coming to you from Boca Raton, Florida, to bring you the Revere Roundup Weekend Walkthrough. Market state, currently 3 green up arrows. The leaders acted particularly well this week despite the indexes having some turbulence. However, we still remain above the short-term 21 EMA and the long-term 50-day moving average on the NASDAQ and the S&P. Currently still at the yellow sub-arrow on the 200-day, although the S&P and the NASDAQ are above those levels. What happened last week? Well, the Israeli-Iran conflict remained contained with no disruptions to oil supply and no action taken by the U.S. Toward the end of the week, Iranian officials said they are ready to discuss limitations on uranium enrichment if Israel stops their attacks. The Trump administration is discussing revoking waivers on U.S. chip companies doing business in China in order to limit Chinese capabilities of U.S. semiconductor technology. That sent semiconductors down on Friday. Economic data for last week showed clear softening trend. Retail sales fell at a sharper than expected 0.9% versus 0.8%. Housing starts dove 9.8 to a 5-week low. Jobless claims hit 245,000, the highest since August of 2023. And the Philly Fed came in down 4, looking for a 2 decline. The other big news is the Federal Open Market Committee kept rates unchanged at 4.25 to 4.5. And Powell signaled he is in no rush to act to cut rates. Basically, they are weighing a tariff-fueled pickup in inflation versus the job market turning potentially cool. They're weighing energy costs coming up versus tax cuts. And they increased the median estimate for the PCE inflation to 3% from 2.7, lower GDP growth, and bumped the estimated unemployment rate to 4.5 from 4.4. So predicting somewhat of a stagflationary environment. The other big sentiment item on the week is the NAAIM. This is the Professional Money Managers Exposure Index. Rose to 94.09%, potentially heating up. This is a contrarian indicator. The last time we were this high was back in December 11th, we were at 99, and December 27th, we were at 99, so back in here. And then before that, we were over 100 at 103 back in early July. So what happened to the market when we get to these levels? Well, we're not quite up to the November, December area of 99. We're still a few points away from that. However, you can see here I marked the 1127 number. And I'm sorry, that should be 1227 right here. I put 1127. You can see the market did have a sell-off. Although shallow, it was indeed a sell-off that you would have wanted to prepare for. Also back on 710, as well as 7.3, we registered at 103. And we did register a pretty nasty sell-off into the summer of last year. So this isn't quite there. Perhaps we do pull back a little bit here, or if we do take a shot at the highs, maybe we'll get this number up and then just have to remain cautious on this. On the S&P individual stock front, there was a down week across the board, except for a handful of names. Again, Palantir and Oracle with a slight gain on the week. AMD with an 8.2% gain. That was a standout in the semiconductors, along with Micron, which has been leading very nicely. Banks were up slightly on the week. Energy names were the better standouts of the week. Raytheon in the defense area, strong, and some of the Newmont mining was strong. On the ETF front, Down across the board, VIX again rose 4.5% on the week. Natural gas was up on the week. USO in the oil area up. XLE and XOP, those are oil and gas and exploration ETFs. And the basically Bitcoin down 3% on the week. So crypto was a bit weak. And the emerging markets and international markets were weak. From the IBD this week showing that the leadership was strong, we had some very good numbers in some of these smaller leading stocks. CRCL, which is an IPO, was up 80%. TSSI up 39%. This one's a little bit small for us. CoreWeave, again, owned by TurboTection and GROTECTION, up 24% this week. Symbotic is small, but that's in the robotics area. This is a LiDAR company, and Rocket Lab up 18%, him and hers, which is a GROTECTION, and TurboTection holding up 15.8%. Lemonade, that's another one that stood out toward the end of the week, up 9%. And Robinhood, clearly the leader in the fintech space, up 8%. Some modest losses across the board, including TMDX, which got hit by a short report on Wednesday, but otherwise some modest losses there. Also on the weekly stocks on the move, this is a good screen IBD comes out with. Darden Restaurants had earnings, was up 8%. Again, in the oil and gas area, Comstock Resources was a standout, up 5%. And TKO up 11% this week. That's a new name on the watch list. Reddit also made it on the watch list as it was up 21%. Credo continued follow through, up 12%, very strong. Amphenol, a stock that I'm using as a bellwether in the data center area. Again, not huge, but a decent week. Sprouts up 8%. Flextronics up 2.9% on the back of Jabil's strong earnings. And Gulfport Energy, some of these energy stocks you can see. Sterling Infrastructure up 15% and AVGO up 1%. EQT in the oil and gas area up 3.6%. So again, leadership did look good. Many of these are leading type stocks. Earnings expected next week. KBH Homes, Carnival Cruise, AVAV in the drone area, and Micron. Those are the names I'll be watching. On the economic front, we have some big numbers coming out. We've got the S&P Global PMI preliminary, existing home sales, home index. The durable good orders are coming out. That's going to be a big one to watch. And the GDP third quarter estimate in the deflator, as well as pending home sales. But the big thing toward the end of the week is going to be the PCE, which is the Fed's preferred gauge of inflation. And that will be the big number coming out. I wanted to discuss something that's going on right now, which is an increase in the amount of distribution that's occurring on the indexes. We do have an elevated count right now. There's, I believe, 7 days of distribution on the S&P and 4 distribution days on the NASDAQ. And I wanted to, unfortunately, I forgot to put this on my slideshow. I emailed this information to myself as I'm going through the IBD. And this is Ken Shreve discussing distribution. Through Wednesday, and this was written as of Wednesday of this past week, and we did get a distribution day on Friday, but we had quadruple witching, so volume was elevated. So again, there are some nuances to this distribution. But through Wednesday, the NASDAQ had shown 3 distribution days since May 21st, and one of those days was a stalling session on May 29th, when the index rallied nearly 0.4%, but closed near the session low after an early pop. That means it's not an index under meaningful distribution at this point. So in Ken's view, he doesn't view this NASDAQ situation as an elevated distribution. On the other hand, the S&P It showed 6 distribution days, again, 7 through Friday, through Wednesday, with 4 of those clustering over 7 trading sessions from June 5th to June 13th. Again, distribution clusters can often be a sign of caution. Okay, but out of the S&P's 4 recent distribution days, only one showed a decline of more than 1%. 2 other days showed modest declines, and the other was a stalling session on June 9th. So out of the S&P 500 6 distribution days since May 20th, only 2 showed decreases of at least 1%. The takeaway is that the S&P is not in major distribution at this point, despite what looks like a high distribution count and some clustering. So I just wanted to bring that up for those who may be concerned about distribution. According to Ken, who runs IBD Leaderboard, he's not particularly concerned about this based on the context of how this distribution has occurred. So again, it's something you want to pay attention to. And if we heat up next week, something to definitely keep an eye on. Another reminder, we are in a power trend. So a power trend offers forgiveness of higher distribution, assuming that the leaders are acting well and the indexes are in general performing normally and acting normally and not showing excessive selling pressure, which at this point we're not. However, we do want to pay attention to this NAM exposure number, and if that gets up over 100, that is something we'll definitely be watching for. All right, so let's go to the charts. Starting with the S&P 500. All right, on the week, we were down a small 0.15%. So trading very tight here, well above all the longer-term moving averages. Held the 21 EMA. Again, we've had several trips down below the 80 EMA. This week, we basically spent one day above 6,000 and then quickly dropped below as the geopolitical situation remained tentative. Okay, so still holding that 21. Again, getting some digestion. NASDAQ was up 0.2%, a little bit stronger on the week. Again, quadruple witching, held the 21 EMA, but did break the 80 EMA on Friday. Q's trading basically tight, a 4-week tight pattern, down slightly on the week, doing nothing wrong. RSP multi-week tight as well. NASDAQ 100 equal weight. Look this up a little bit more here. So you can see multi-week tight, again going to the daily chart, trading right about on the 21 EMA. Again, we've almost got a golden cross going on. These indexes, let's go back to the S&P 500. Again, we're still a little bit below on the golden cross. NASDAQ is coming up on a golden cross probably as early as next week, potentially later next week. Q's very close to that golden cross, big couplet handle, and RSP still a little bit ways away on that. That's the how about the NASDAQ equal weight? Again, that's the closest one. So that's another positive development occurring while we're digesting back to the 21 EMA. Again, still weakness in the mid caps and the small caps after getting rejected at the 200-day moving average, holding up along the 21 EMA, which is the green line. So again, we want to see these indexes overcome those longer-term moving averages as well as the 200-day moving averages. IWM again continuing to rally. Again, still monitoring this potential incompleted inverse head and shoulder pattern. If we take out the 200-day moving average, that would be extremely bullish in the upcoming weeks ahead. VIX was up, or actually down 0.9% on the week. But still elevated above 20. Our huge standout this week, This is Kathy Wood's flagship ETF. They have a huge position in a couple of the major new IPOs and definitely almost at recent highs here, going back to last year, early this spring, actually. So that's looking quite good. The IBD 50 also with a 0.95% gain on the week and basically up almost 1% on Friday. So that's definitely not bearish, despite the indexes being very weak. The IBD 50 is our type of stocks, and that showed extreme strength on the week. Dollar was slightly up on the week. 30-year bonds slightly down on the yields for the week. 10-year bonds slightly down. Bitcoin again lost about 1.79% this week and back below the 21 EMA, facing in this kind of cup with handle formation after getting rejected at all-time highs. So again, volume is a little bit on the lighter side, so we're going to keep an eye on this. Semiconductors up 4% on the week on the SOXX, 1.28% on the SMH. Again, the SMH has a bigger position in NVIDIA. Actually, that's the largest holding, where the SOXX is more diversified, with OVGO being the largest position. Uranium up 1.7% on the week, pulled back toward the end of the week here, and again, been riding this 8 EMA. And gold down slightly on the week. Silver, 3-week tight, but down 0.7% on the week. Gold miners down 4% on the week, and mags trading a 4-week tight, down 0.5% on the week. Typically from here, I go into the Mag 7, but there's nothing to see, so I'm not going to waste time on them. What we're going to do here is go straight to the watch list, and I've got this sorted by my flagged names for the upcoming week. These are names that were either extremely strong last week and notable, or are setting up for potential buy candidates coming into the next week. And I've got them sorted by flagged and composite rating as the secondary sort. So these are the highest composite rated flag stocks on my list. Starting off with LPL Financial, trading tight here, very close to the pivot. Again, really hasn't been able to break out here, but could potentially break out of this big cup, consolidate double bottom base at the bottom here, cup with potential long flat base, looking decent. Credo was able to follow through this week. Again, this is a GROTECTION and a Toddzilla holding. I did get shaken out of it when it broke below this level here on this day, but did quickly get back into it on this day when it broke through these highs and added into this position along the way. So this looks extremely good. Did get rejected up here around the old highs of January, but closed fairly well on the week, up 16%. Pan American Silver is another one, 3-week tight. However, did back off on Friday on the 21 EMA. HIM's one of our favorite stocks and growth stories with a nice 15.7% gain. Was able to hold this 21 EMA on several attempts after this nasty reversal bar. However, this is redeeming itself and looking extremely good. Again, several growth areas for this company in dermatology, weight loss, mental health, and also upcoming testosterone therapy and menopause. So these are new products on the horizon. They were able to secure their weight loss division with a deal with Novo Nordisk. They basically offer custom solutions as well for specialty doses. So their growth is just off the charts, and this is looking very good. So we're extremely bullish on this, and we all have positions in all of our portfolios. MELI, basically highlighting this as a potential pullback to the 10-week moving average, which is the red line. Again, very strong earnings and sales numbers here. Expensive stock, hard for a lot of people to buy with smaller accounts. but this is a stock we'll be seeing how it can recover off the 10-week moving average. And again, as I mentioned, Amphenol, I'm using this as a proxy for data center. This had a very strong breakout here on earnings, followed through with a cut-base breakout, and it's just been grinding higher. They make key connections for fiber optic in the data center, so it's definitely a pick and shovel play. Axon with basically a tight pattern here. And this is a big institutional favorite, just basically trading tight. Quanta Services trading tight. Robinhood new 52-week highs. Again, we'll be watching if it can overtake these old IPO highs right back here around $85. So $78.50. I think it's going to be able to do that, but we'll see. Avgo with a 3-week tight, digesting this huge 100% plus or 90 something 98% move from the lows to the highs here, and forming a nice handle formation. Nice bounce on Friday off the 21 EMA. Again, watching this for a potential flag breakout here. This looks pretty attractive. Good volume on Friday with quadruple witching. Micron just standing out as a huge leader in semiconductors. Highlighting this because earnings come out on Wednesday of next week or Tuesday. Yeah, Wednesday. So definitely one to keep an eye on as earnings and sales are starting to turn around big time here. Taiwan Semiconductor is another one which, again, broke the ADMA on Friday, again on Trump's comments of potentially cutting back technology to China. So we'll see how that goes. But that's definitely a tough thing for semiconductors during this trade war with China. NRG Energy setting up here in a flat base, pretty much trading dead tight along the 21 EMA. So that's a stock continuing to watch. Haven't done anything with it yet, but again, looking good. Toast now showing a flat base. Discussed that was probably going to be the case last week, and here we go with your flat base. And again, relative strength backing off. We're going to need to see some volume come into this. Oddity, another name in the consumer area that had just a massive reaction to earnings, trading down to the 21 EMA and holding. This was on a big secondary offering or convertible offering. So this is just digesting right now. EQT, I did take a position of this in Toddzilla as it broke through this high. Wanted to see if it was going to hold up into these because these oil and gas names are notorious for breaking out and failing. But after the second day it was showing strength, I did take a position in this, and we'll see how that goes. That's a very nice looking chart. And again, trading back through these all-time highs pretty much. 60.44, this high back here was 60.68. So very close to that. That was several years ago. 60.80, so it did register an all-time high going back. AR, same thing. Dutch Bros, this is a pullback to the 10-week and 50-day moving average. Again, a little bit disappointing here. Could not handle this reversal bar here, and we bailed out on this stock right on this particular day here. So we're not going to take our eyes off of this as it is a growth story. However, coffee prices are rising, and this could be a potential headwind in the short term. So I know coffee futures have been really causing some margin pressures potentially on some of these coffee companies. Let's see how Starbucks is doing. Yeah, not much. All right, Snowflake, again, trading tight. This is the liquid leader. Again, nice shakeout at the bottom of this cup base. Strong advance up the right side, cup breakout on earnings. Just riding up along the ADMA. It's definitely the liquid leader right now. Shake Shack with a nice week, up 7.5%. Was able to break through this shelf here on Friday. So another standout in the leadership for Friday, which is nice to see. Garden Restaurants earnings this week and shook out down to the 21 EMA and made new highs on the week here. Range Resources, another oil and gas name, which showed strength. TKO, there was some news on this. I didn't catch it, but it did break out of a nice cup with handle base. Pulled back a little bit on Friday, so adding this to the radar list. Cisco Systems, again, not the most exciting stock, but a good proxy for the networking group as it was able to close fairly well on Friday into the cup with handle pivot zone on big volume. Mr. Cooper and the mortgage servicing still showing relative strength. Momentum Holdings, Todzilla Holdings was able to advance this week and show strength. They make V cells, which are critical components with LiDAR. LiDAR is becoming an important area of robotics and automation. And as you can see here on the weekly, we've got a big earnings turnaround from negative sales to positive, negative earnings to triple digit earnings. So I do like this play and I'm in it. Flextronics breaking out on Jabil strong earnings. Oscar Health, this is a schizo stock that I've tried several times and gotten shaken out of it. Saw it coming up through here on Tuesday, Wednesday, and then Friday of this past week with some huge action. Definite character change in this stock. And there's talk in the Senate version of the bill of not cutting Medicare Advantage plans. And I think that's the news that this stock wanted to hear, that these government funding for these Medicare plans were not going to get cut. So this is big news. This is a really cheap stock. So again, you can see it's got very nice sales and earnings growth. Only $5.4 billion market cap. So trading well below one-time sales. So it's potentially a stock to keep an eye on as it comes up on these highs from back in 2023-24, and then the all-time IPO high, which it was never able to get above. A-Lab, a little bit of a disappointment this week. This stock was looking good. Had a failed breakout through this little shelf formation. Rejected down to the 21 EMA on big volume. And again, still trading in this multi-week tight. But again, the closes on the week have been on the lower end. So there's definitely a seller in this name. So it definitely needs a clean break above 100 here. So definitely going to keep this 100 level on the alert list to see whether this thing can finally go. BWX Technologies and the nuclear component group had a strong week and a strong close on Friday, breaking out of this big cup base. So this still looks actionable. Hammer Sports just trading tight. Again, I believe they also had a secondary offering in here, but it's just holding up along the 21 EMA. Oracle down 4.6% post earnings last week. Again, this was an earnings standout. Nice 13%. Power earnings gap backed off a little bit into the pivot zone, and this company's got some nice growth coming ahead next fiscal year. So this is the best growth I've seen out of Oracle in probably 15 years. Since these IPOs have been so hot, I just wanted to put Hinge Health on here. They're not making money yet, but it's close to breaking out of an IPO base. Volume is not that big, but this can change pretty rapidly. So relative strength making new high, IPO base breakout right around 43.80. So just put that on your radar. Coinbase with a big breakout this week out of this low cup with handle base on big volume. Again, there were some announcements here, and this looks extremely good and definitely on our watch list. Circle Internet Group, huge breakout. Again, these IPOs Circle, CoreWeave. One of the other reasons why I wanted to highlight a few IPOs this week. This was up a massive 80% this week. Oh, and incidentally, that's a ARKK holding. So that's why Kathy Wood's ARKK is looking so good. Sale Point's another IPO, building up an IPO base here with a $24 pivot. This looks particularly good. Again, volume's a little lackluster here, in the less than 40, 50 million in average daily volume. However, this breaks out, that can change relatively quickly. So I wanted to highlight these, even though they don't meet our liquidity requirements. Again, in the new stage, 2 uptrend area, Dollar Tree. Again, this is a number 19 industry group. So this looks interesting here. Live Nation also with some relative strength this week as it broke out of a couple of handle on Friday. Squatted a little bit, but had some good volume. Again, some decent numbers coming up for fiscal 26. And this looks pretty good. Embraer, the Paris Air Show was this week, and this broke out of a couple of handle base. This stock has been in a steady uptrend for multiple years now, since 2023. AMD, continuing its relative strength. Backed off a little bit on Friday, but was able to secure a position above the 200-day moving average now for 4 straight days. This is definitely a character change for AMD after this long stage 4 decline and this movement back up, some consolidation and a breakout above all the weekly moving averages. Again, you've got the 10 crossing above the 20, and then you've still got the 30-week moving average turning down, starting to flatten out, and of course the 40 weeks turning down. So we'll want to see some better moving average alignment here, but this really could have been bought since it had a low risk entry point above this 2252 pivot on this huge volume. And if this sets up over the next few days or weeks and just tightens up, it could set up into another buy point here. So this is definitely something in the earlier area. And AMD is an all or nothing stock. When it starts going, it goes. When it starts selling, it sells. Rocket Lab with a great week, up 18% here. Huge close on Friday. EXE, Expand Energy, another oil and gas stock that broke out this week. And we highlighted all these in our podcast the Friday before last Friday here. And drone maker, AeroVironment, they're coming out in 3 days with earnings on Tuesday. So drones are hot right now with the war going on. This drone warfare is a big deal. So definitely one to pay attention to. Reddit with some news this week and was able to break again through this early entry area of 130, backing off a little bit. So again, the moving averages are a little bit janky on this right now. However, it's a liquid stock that, if it tightens up here over the next couple weeks, could end up providing another entry. Rubrik, disappointing week, down 5%, broke the 21 EMA. However, currently going to watch to see if it pulls back to the 10-week moving average to offer an entry point. This was a huge move here. Broke straight out through the double bottom base, peaked out just above 100 and backing off. So this is pretty normal action. Volume's been kind of heavy in here. Again, earnings, it peaked on earnings and just hasn't been able to do well, but I am watching that pullback. CoreWeave, congratulations to TurboTection for just slaying this one. And Don also took a position in GROTECTION in it. And Connor and Ted have been highlighting this high tight flag. They bought it just perfectly through this pivot. These guys are awesome. Congratulations. MP, again, not actionable right here, but just a huge breakout through this cup base as the rare earth elements. This can be a choppy stock, but this is showing extreme power. Lemonade with a beautiful close on Friday. Uh, Again, this is a beautiful setup off the 21 day. Pull back down to it, bounce back up through the 80 MA. Could have been taken. Beautiful follow through into a nice kind of cup with handle breakout. Dollar General, another one in this discount retail group, ranked number 19. Looking good into a new stage 2 uptrend. Ollie's the other one. I didn't put it on the list. Probably should be on the list though. Looks pretty good and closed at the highs of the day on Friday. So I'm going to pop that on the list now. Take two still trading tight up here. SMR pulled back about 17% is another TurboTection name that they did a great job entering. Roku with some positive news on Amazon this week and potentially could be entering a new stage 2 uptrend. This is a choppy stock, but one thing to note is earnings and sales are turning around, and we're looking at triple-digit earnings growth coming up in the September and December quarter. So this deal with Amazon could be a potential catalyst to watch out for. ASTS, again, extended, but just wanted to show the strength on the week. Mosaic continues its strength, so watching this in the fertilizer area. And that is it. Looks like we missed some of these names here. Hold on a second. Yeah, when I made the change and added Ollie, it screwed my list up here. All right, so Nevis, this is another stock we're watching. Nice flag formation here, back into the 80 MA. Again, could pull a potential core weave and break back out through that 5087 level. Keep your eyes on this. SMCI had a nice 9% gain on the week. Again, this is a stock which was riddled with some accounting issues. And again, I think this is a pretty solid company. Management, has done some questionable things. However, it is a very cheap stock, and they've got this big $20 billion contract with Saudi Arabia. And, there are some big numbers starting to come up in fiscal 26. So it's a cheap stock. Their audit, they basically were required. Ernst & Young dropped them last year. They hired BDO. They were required to get an independent audit committee together. They did that. The independent audit committee went through all their internal controls, all their revenue recognition and everything, cleared them on it. Okay, that's back here when the stock moved and then peaked in earnings. Pulled back, retested these lows back here, and it's now potentially starting a new stage 2. So all your moving averages are in alignment here. Again, I think the SEC still has an ongoing investigation, so that's something to watch out for. So there is some hair still on this stock, but the independent audit committee did clear them of the reasons that Ernst & Young dropped them. So if we get a clearance from the SEC or no fines, that could be the catalyst for the stock to go higher. IONQ, another name in the quantum area looking good. That's on our watch list. Tempus AI, we're in this. Turbo and Toddzilla's in this. Again, holding the 80 MA, ants forming. And again, this is a company very interesting in the med tech area with AI. CCJ, not actionable, pulling back a little bit. Celestica in the contract manufacturing area, strong. Palantir down on the week. DoorDash, 3-week tight. This looks very good. Viva Systems looks very good. Spotify, 3-week tight. Root pulling back to the 10-week moving average held. GEV up 1.7% on the week. Just consolidating basically. Seagate, not actionable right now, but again, beautiful V bottom 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 straight weeks up. So this is definitely showing a lot of relative strength. Not actionable, but watching for a setup. Cloudflare setting up here at the highs of this cup with handle. Nasdaq just trading tight. CyberArk trading tight. Jabil with a huge earnings breakout. Kratos Defense, again, extended into the profit-taking zone. Raytheon broke out last week following through. CF Industries holding up right at this top pivot. Next Tracker backed off 5%. Continue to put it on the list, though, just because it's showing notable strength, holding the 21 EMA. I believe Don said in our group chat that not one member of our 21 over 21 last week broke the 21 EMA. So that's just further confirmation that leadership still looks good. Oklo backed off. Ali, we added that to the list here. Been trading tight. We definitely want to see some relative strength and power taking it through this area here, but that looks pretty constructive. Again, number 19 group, so you want to pay attention to that. If two we already did, SMR we already did, Roku we already did. And I think, again, we got out of order, but that takes us through the end of the watch list. So that wraps up the weekend review. Again, thank you for your time this weekend. If you'd like to send me any questions, my email is todd@revereasset.com. You can follow me on X at toddmichael70. Again, we appreciate likes, follows, and shares. If you'd like to become a client, please give us a call at 855-REAL-WEALTH. And thank you, and we look forward to talking to you next weekend.